No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
Nobody is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
Nobody is above the law.
No one 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 is above the law.
Raise your hand if you knew Joe was going to pardon Hunter. That was a trap. If you didn't raise your hand, you are silly. You either are lying or you have been lied to, and you should reevaluate your news sources. Just a suggestion, but definitely do it. Hope you guys had a fabulous Thanksgiving. I did. We kind of celebrated Thanksgiving a little earlier because my brother's birthday is at the beginning of November, and that way we can all, be together. And it was great. And now the tree's up. What I wanted to get to before we get started, we're going to talk about Joe pardoning Hunter Biden. But first, Trump's Happy Thanksgiving tweet made me laugh out loud when he posted it. So I just thought I'd read it just for anybody who hasn't seen it. Happy Thanksgiving to all. Starting off great. Including to the radical left lunatics who have worked so hard to destroy our country. Not pulling any punches, not even on Thanksgiving. Thank you, Mr. President. But who have miserably failed and will always fail because their ideas and policies are so hopelessly bad that the great people of our nation just gave a landslide victory to those who want to make America great again! ! All caps. I love this man. You know how freaking boring? I don't know if Kamala did a Happy Thanksgiving post, but imagine had she won, her Thanksgiving post would not be this good. I feel like every president from now on has to have X posts that are this good. This is glorious. This is everything I wanted and more. Don't worry, our country will soon be respected, productive, fair, and strong, and you will be, more than ever before, proud to be an American. I feel like he might as well have said, in spite of you. I feel like it was very nice. And the people who are offended, and there were plenty of people who are offended, all I see is hate and division. Has he actually done anything helpful? He has. First of all. Second of all, the only reason you would be offended is if when he says, including to the radical left lunatics who have worked so hard to destroy our country, the only reason you would be offended is if you see yourself in that group. It's not like he named names. He just named a group. If you're not part of that group, you shouldn't be upset. If it's just a small fringe radical minority, then who are you offended for? Anyways, that was hilarious. Happy Thanksgiving. Let's move on to talking about Joe and Hunter because they're doing some stuff. Joe's not going quietly into the night because of course he's not. We'll read his statement pardoning Hunter. Okay, I'm going to get in real close here because don't let these glasses fool you. I still can't see things. It's new, by the way. Having glasses, I don't like it. I'm not a fan. I preferred having eyeballs at work. Statement from President Joe Biden. Today, I signed a pardon for my son Hunter. From the day I took office, I said I would not interfere with the Justice Department's decision-making. Maybe you should have. And I kept my word even as I have watched my son being selectively and unfairly prosecuted. That's the important part. We're going to stick a pin in that. Remember that. He said he wasn't going to interfere with the Justice Department, even as he watched his son being selectively and unfairly persecuted. Okay. Without aggravating factors like use in a crime, multiple purchases, or buying a weapon on a straw purchaser, people are almost never brought to trial on felony charges, solely for how they filled out a gun form. That's true. That should not have happened. But it was also stupid it was also a plan to not bring him to court on harder charges because all of this was an illusion. It was to pretend that Donald Trump wasn't being selectively and unfairly persecuted, as Joe Biden says. So yes, that was a very silly reason to bring him to trial, considering everything the Hunter Biden laptop holds. But that's what you did. Those who were late paying their taxes because of serious addictions, but paid them back subsequently with interest and penalties, are typically given non-criminal resolutions. I disagree. I've known many addicts. I don't feel like the IRS is ever like, oh, well, if you were an addict, then it's fine. I mean, I guess he paid them back, and he paid them back with subsequent interest and penalties. I guess you have to do that, but he's also in a very privileged position where he was able to do that. A lot of people coming out of drug addiction have lost everything, and they cannot do that, and they will get persecuted. So I guess, I guess we can, fair is fair. Nepotism made sure that he was able to do that. Something he probably should have been doing anyways. Something maybe you should have been looking at for him as his father, seeing as how he was in and out of drug rehabilitation centers. Neither here nor there. Are typically given non-criminal resolutions. I don't know if that's true. It is clear that Hunter was treated differently. That he was. He's the son of a president. He has access to the White House. He is doing business overseas with foreign partners for the president of the United States. So, treated differently? I hope so. Because no one is above the law. The charges in his cases came about only after several of my political opponents in Congress instigated these to attack me and to oppose my election. Is that what it was, Joe? Is it? I think he was left well enough alone until actually they even lied for you. They even lied about the Hunter Biden laptop forever. And then people, conservatives essentially, wouldn't shut up about it because Dems were fine. Dems were just like, oh, well, what laptop? I don't know what you're talking about. They said it was a lie. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that story. But the people, we the people, wouldn't shut up about it. So they were like, oh, we got to do something so it doesn't look like we're unfairly persecuting Trump. And this is what they chose to do, to go after a gun charge. I think right now they don't even know where the Hunter laptop is. Is that true? Or who's in possession of it? The head of the FBI, probably. Then a carefully negotiated plea deal. Hold on. The charges in his cases came about only after several of my political opponents in Congress instigated them to attack me and oppose my election. He's rewriting history here. Then a carefully negotiated plea deal, agreed to by the Department of Justice, unraveled in the courtroom with a number of my political opponents in Congress taking credit for bringing political pressure on the process. Now, why did it unravel, Joe? Why did it unravel? I will tell you why it unraveled. Because the judge was like, hey, you can't just, the plea deal can't just say that we can't prosecute Hunter for anything he's ever done in the last 11 years. Like, by the way, this pardon says. We can't do that. That's what the judge said. But I guess that was unfair treatment for a Nepo baby. Let's see. With the number, blah, blah, had the plea deal held, I wouldn't have had to do this pardon. That's really what I was hoping on, says Joe. Had the plea deal held, it would have been a fair, reasonable resolution of Hunter's cases. By fair and reasonable resolution, he means what I wanted and expected. But he was like, it's fine because Kamala's going to win anyways, and then I won't have to pardon him. She'll just pardon him for me, and then I won't have lied, and my son will be off. So no big deal. No reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's cases can reach any other conclusion than Hunter was singled out only because he is my son. This is so funny. This is so funny. So everything that everyone has been saying about Trump for literally years, like this whole time, is that the excuse you're using for Hunter? I feel like he's still helping us out. Like, oh, Joe. He was singled out because he was his son. And yes, everyone's out to get you, Joe. And that is wrong. It is wrong. That is true. Accurate. That is wrong. You should not do that. You should not single out your political opponents. That is wrong. There has been an effort to break Hunter. Has there? I mean, Hunter has made a serious effort to break himself, who has been 5.5 years sober. Has he? How long has it been since we found that coke in the White House? Has he? Even in the face of unrelenting attacks and selective prosecution. Even in the face of unrelenting attacks and selective prosecution. In trying to break Hunter, they've tried to break me. because he's your bag man. If he goes down, you go down, which is why you are pardoning him, you selfish, lying old man. And there's no reason to believe it will stop here. Enough is enough. Gosh, it's the self-righteousness for me. It's just like he's just so on that moral high horse that he has no business being on. For my entire career, I have followed a simple principle. I can't wait. I can't wait to hear what this is. Just tell the American people the truth. Joe, be so for real right now. Hold on. For my entire career, I have followed a simple principle. Just tell the American people the truth. You're lying right now. That line is a lie. You are such a liar. I don't know. I can't even. I'm just going to keep reading. They'll be fair-minded. You mean they'll excuse my lies? They'll accept my lies. Got it. Okay. Here's the truth. I feel like every time he says, here's the truth, there's about to be a lie. So let's see. Let's see if that's a good guess. I believe in the justice system, sir. Sir, you started this statement saying that your son has been, selectively and unfairly persecuted. That they've been trying to break him to get to you. But it's okay. Okay, let's pretend we believe him. I believe in the justice system. But as I've wrestled with this, have you? I also believe raw politics has infected this process, and it led to a miscarriage of justice. And once I made this decision, this weekend, I'm sure it was this weekend, there was no sense in delaying it further. I hope Americans will understand why a father and a president would come to this decision. Joe. Listen, Joe, listen. Okay, here's what we're going to focus on. He's admitting that the justice system can be corrupted. He's admitting that someone can be selectively and unfairly prosecuted, right? So everything we've been saying about Trump, while all these Dems, all these libtards have been going around being like, well, he was tried by a jury of his peers, and that means he's guilty. To which I have said this whole time, do you still believe O.J. Simpson was innocent? Because nobody believes O.J. Simpson was innocent. Nobody believes that. So they have to say, no, I don't believe that. They won't because they're dishonest. But anybody rational is like, no, that man was guilty of sin. You have to admit that our justice system can and has been corrupted. This is one of those instances. O.J. Simpson is one of those instances. Trump is several of those instances. So it's Joe. I think it's like it's give and take, right? It's give and take. He is pardoning his son and kind of him, because this isn't just a pardon for these gun charges that he mentions or the tax evasions, which is like the least of it, the least of Hunter's crimes. He pardoned him for like the last 11 years. So basically, since the Burisma scandal happened, that's how long he pardoned him for. So he's doing this to save his own skin. Let's not pretend it's because he's a father and a president. It's because he is a criminal. But that's not how libs take it, because of course they don't. They just keep going back to, well, you can't say anything because Trump is a felon. Your president, the guy you voted for, this guy, Biden, he said that his son was selectively and unfairly prosecuted. What does that mean? What does that mean? Oh, it means our justice system can be corrupted, and currently is. Unless you do some mental gymnastics, which I'm sure some of you are like, well, he's right about Hunter, but you're wrong about Trump. Really hard to say. Let's see from libs' own libs' own mouths how they're responding to this. Some of it's funny, some of it's ridiculous, some of it's just like, it makes me make that face that I read when Joe was like, I think telling the truth to American people is what you do. It's my one simple rule to life. Shut up, Joe. You're a liar. Okay, hold on. Next video. Roll the tape. Okay, guys, total plot twist. as I was about to show you some lib reactions to Joe pardoning Hunter, which is basically them just making a bunch of excuses or being like, oh, I can't believe he lied to us. He would never do that. He's an honest man. We're going to put a pin in that because as I was doing that, the district court has actually responded to Joe's attempt to pardon Hunter. So I'm going to read that real quick and see what that's about. I haven't read it yet, so this will be my first time. So let's read it together. Okay, here we go. The United States of America, by and through its Council of Record, hereby submits this position to the defendant's motion to dismiss the indictment contained in defendant's notice of pardon. The defendant's motion should be denied since there is no binding authority on this court which requires dismissal. Oh, Lord. Oh, this is for real a plot twist. All right. All right. Maybe justice will actually be served. Let's see what happens. Memorandum of Points and Authorities. On December 1st, 2024, media outlets reported that the president had issued a pardon for the defendant. Shortly thereafter, defense counsel filed defendant's notice of pardon. The defendant did not attach the pardon to its filing, and the government has not received a copy of it. In that filing, defense counsel asserted without any legal support that a full and unconditional pardon requires dismissal of the indictment against him, and further, that the pardon requires an automatic dismissal of the indictment with prejudice. With prejudice. With prejudice. Doesn't with prejudice mean that they can bring it back up? Or that means the opposite. That means they cannot bring it back up. Requires an automatic dismissal of the indictment with prejudice. Okay, editor Stephanie here. With prejudice in court essentially means game over, no do-overs. When a case is dismissed with prejudice, it's dead, buried, and not coming back. The plaintiff can't bring the same claim back to the court again. It's like the legal equivalent of getting your essay thrown out with no chance for reimbursement. So, with prejudice in Hunter's case would mean they can never bring these charges against him again. Which, by the way, we learned this because it's the opposite of what they were doing for Trump. They dismissed Trump's without prejudice, which means they reserve the right to bring about these charges once again. On the flip side, if something's dismissed without prejudice, you've still got a shot at bringing your case back if you can sort out whatever mess made the judge toss it out in the first place. Ooh, looks like Trump has a mess to sort out. So in short, with prejudice means end of the road, while without prejudice means maybe next time if you've got your act together. All right, moving on. Notice at 1, defense counsel misrepresents the law. Nothing requires the dismissal of indictment in this case. In the United States versus Stephen Bannon, the defendant moved to dismiss the indictment pending against him after receiving a presidential pardon. The government took the following position, which this opposition is consistent with. Ooh. So because Steve Bannon got punished even though he got pardoned, they're saying Hunter still needs to be punished. And I actually looked up, and I'll show you in a second, the other presidents who have pardoned family members or family adjacent members. And I believe, some of them have served their time prior to the sentencing, but we'll look into that in a second. Let's finish reading this. The government took the following position, which this opposition is consistent with. The government does not dispute that the pardon, which has been docketed by the court, ends the prosecution as to Bannon under indictment. However, the government respectfully submits that there is neither a need for an order dismissing the indictment, nor any authority mandating such an outcome on these facts. Instead, the government submits that the court can and should direct the clerk of courts to terminate Bannon as a defendant in this case and have the docket sheet reflect the pardon as a disposition of his charges. If the court is inclined to dismiss the indictment as to Bannon, the government respectfully submits that any order of dismissal should conform to the language and scope of the pardon. While, as Bannon's motion itself notes, courts have not acted uniformly in ending a case against a pardoned defendant, there is no question that the court may simply terminate Bannon from the case based on the docket pardon. Terminating all motions and pending charges to be as to a defendant pardoned prior to being convicted. A presidential pardon for a defendant who had not been sentenced and notating on the docket sheet that the case against the defendant had been terminated and charges were disposed of by a full pardon granted. Moreover, where courts have entered orders dismissing the indictment, including in many of the cases cited by Bannon, those orders have generally been entered with the consent of the government, and in cases involving single defendants. Those facts are obviously not present here, and to the contrary, the charges and forfeit of allegations remain pending as to the 3 co-defendants, notwithstanding Bannon's stated preference for an order of dismissal. This motion neither cites to any controlling authority requiring such a dismissal, nor does he indicate why simply terminating him from the case would be sufficient. So basically, you can't just do whatever you want. United States versus Bannon. Here, the government does not consent to dismissal. The court in Bannon found that neither the government nor Bannon has cited authority binding on this court as to whether the court course is to administratively terminate Bannon or to dismiss the indictment against him. The court further noticed that the majority of courts, when faced with such decision, has chosen to dismiss an indictment, and in that case, the court chose to do so. In addition to citing decisions where a court chose to do so, the Bannon court also cited United States versus Ulrich, where the indictment was not dismissed. In that case, the court issued an order that said the following: Order as to Casey Ulrich, in light of the grant of clemency filed on February 5th, 2021, the clerk is directed to terminate all motions as to Casey Ulrich and administratively terminate all pending charges against Casey Ulrich as January 19th, 2021, pursuant to the grant of clemency. United States versus Ulrich. In the United States versus Cartwright, a case like the present one where the defendant was pardoned after pleading guilty, but before sentencing, the court issued a similar order that said the following: The court orders, pursuant to an executive grant of clemency signed by the President Barack Obama, dated January 17, 2017, Mr. Cartwright is pardoned for the offense charged in the information filed under the above referenced docket number of the United States District Court for the District of Columbia, and for all offenses committed by him arising from the facts set forth in the information and statement of offense field under the docket number. United States versus Cartwright. In neither case was the indictment subsequently dismissed. As a matter of past practice in this direct court, do not dismiss indictments when pardons are granted. Rather, in each of the most recent cases where pardons have been granted by former President Obama and former President Trump, the United States District Court for the Central District of California has not dismissed the indictment. Instead, it has been the practice of this court that once an executive grant of clemency has been filed on the docket is marked closed. The disposition entry is updated to reflect the executive grant of clemency, and no further action is taken by the court. The logic of why courts in this district and in other districts do not dismiss indictments following a grant of clemency is sound. The D.C. Circuit's decision in the United States versus Flynn explains, as Chief Justice Marshall wrote, "A pardon is an act of grace proceeding from the power entrusted with the execution of the laws, which exempt the individual on whom it is bestowed from the punishment the law inflicts for a crime he has committed." United States versus Wilson. Emphasis added. In other words, a pardon does not blot out guilt or expunge a judgment of conviction. Furthermore, a pardon cannot erase a judgment of conviction or its underlying legal and factual findings. Vacating all opinions, judgments, and verdicts of this court and the district court initially never reached on the legal question of the defendant's guilt. Emphasis added. Specifically, as to whether a pardon must, as the defendant wrongly claims, result in the dismissal of an indictment, the D.C. Circuit's decision in RE North explains why it does not. An indictment establishes probable cause that the accused has committed a crime. Guilt can be established only by a much higher standard, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Because a pardon does not blot out guilt or expunge a judgment of conviction, one can conclude that a pardon does not blot out probable cause or guilt or expunge an indictment. So basically, you can take the crime off their record, but that doesn't mean they're not guilty, and that doesn't mean that they don't have to serve time, is what I'm understanding. In Re North is particularly instructive in that case. A defendant, Claire E. George, former CIA deputy director for operations, requested reimbursement for attorney fees she had incurred as a result of the Iran Contra investigation inducted by independent counsel Lawrence E. Walsh. The Ethics of Government Act, which created the independent counsel, authorized to award of attorney's fees, but only if an individual were not indicted. After being indicted, George received a pardon from President H.W. Bush and applied for a reimbursement of attorney's fees on that basis. In re-educating her claim, the D.C. Circuit held that the pardon does not blot out guilt or expunge the indictment. Though pardon George's disability, the fact of his indictment remains, preventing the court from awarding him attorney's fees. If a pardon did not expunge the indictment, in that case, it should not do so here. The cases cited by the defendant in his filing do not explain why an independent should be dismissed following an act of clemency, when the act of clemency terminates the criminal case. More broadly, there is no defect in the indictment or in the process that led to its return that justifies dismissing it. First, it was returned by a lawfully constituted grand jury that is an independent agency of the court. United States versus Williams. The grand jury, functional independence from the judicial branch, is evident both in the scope of its power to investigate criminal wrongdoing and in the manner in which that power is exercised. Second, the defendant filed 8 motions to dismiss the indictment, making every conceivable argument for why it should be dismissed, all of which were determined to be meritless. Of note, the defendant argued that the indictment was a product of vindictive and selective prosecution. The court rejected that claim, finding that, as the court stated at the hearing, defendant filed his motion without any evidence, and there was none and never has been any evidence of vindictive or selective persecution in this case. The defendant made similar baseless accusations in the United States District Court for the District of Delaware. Those claims were all rejected. In explaining why, the Delaware court exposed the nonsensical nature of the defendant's selective prosecution claims. I wonder what would be acceptable as evidence that someone was being unfairly prosecuted. Like would you have to find direct text messages between 2 politicians conspiring? Or would just all the news sources repeating the same lie be enough? I wonder. To the extent that the defendant's claim that he is being selectively persecuted rests solely on him being the son of the sitting president, that claim is belied by the facts. That claim is belied by the facts. The executive branch that charged defendants is headed by that sitting president, defendant's father. The attorney general heading the DOJ was appointed by and reports to defendant's father. Told you, Joe. And that attorney general appointed the special counsel. He just tried to make the same excuse as Trump. Only you're in charge, sir. You appointed the attorney general. That's a very good point. General appoints the special counsel who made the challenged charging decision in this case. While defendant's father was still the sitting president, defendant's claim is effectively that his own father targeted him for being his son, a claim that is nonsensical under the facts here. Regardless of whether congressional Republicans attempted to influence the executive branch, there is no evidence that they were successful in doing so. And in any event, y'all really think Republicans try to do that? I do not. I do not believe that. I didn't even know that was the thing that was being said. The executive branch prosecuting defendant was at all relevant. I mean, there was definitely Republicans being like, "Hey, maybe take a look at that laptop." That's all we're saying. They weren't just saying like, get him for no reason. Defendant was at relevant times and still is headed by defendant's father. United States versus Hunter Biden. The court similarly found his vindictive prosecution claims unmoored from any evidence or even a coherent theory as to vindictiveness. Ooh. Played the wrong card. You played the wrong card, Joe. The court's being like, are you calling us corrupt, sir? Are you calling us corrupt and just on your way out the door? Yet, as was the case with selective prosecution, the relevant point in time is when the prosecutor decided to no longer pursue pretrial diversion and instead indict defendant. Whether former administration officials harbored actual animus towards defendant at some point in the past is therefore irrelevant. This is especially true whereas here the court has been given no evidence or indication that any of these individuals, whether filled with animus or not, have successfully influenced special counsel Wise or his team in the decision to indict defendants in the case. At best, defendants has generically alleged that individuals from the prior administration were or are targeting him or his father, and therefore his prosecution here must be vindictive. The problem with the argument is that the charging decision at issue was made during this administration by special counsel Wise at a time when the head of the executive branch prosecuting defendant is defendant's father. Defendant has offered nothing credible to support a finding that anyone who played a role in the decision to abandon pretrial diversion and move forward with indictment here harbored any animus towards defendant. Any claim of vindictive prosecution based on actual vindictiveness must fail. So basically, Joe, you can't just say stuff. In court, you can't just say stuff, you have to prove stuff. Unless it's Trump, then you can just say stuff, it's fine. The defendant appealed the denial of his motion in this case to the North Circuit, and his denial of his motion in the District of Delaware case in the Third Circuit. United States versus Robert Hunter Biden. In total, 11 different Article III judges appointed by 6 different presidents, including his father, considered and rejected the defendant's claims, including his claims for selective and vindictive prosecution. Wow, he really did try not to pardon him. They were really going for it. They were really trying to see which judge would appeal it. The defendant pled guilty to all the charges in the indictment on September 5th, 2024, and he pleaded guilty. According to the declaration filed on his behalf, the defendant again acknowledged his guilt in accepting the act of clemency. So, twice he pleaded guilty. A pardon carries an imputation of guilt. Acceptance, a confession of it. As stated above, the defendant did not docket the pardon, nor has the government seen it. If media reports are accurate, the government does not challenge that the defendant has been the recipient of an act of mercy, but that does not mean the grand jury's decision to charge him based on a finding of probable cause should be wiped away, as if it never occurred. It also does not mean that his charges should be wiped away because the defendant falsely claimed that the charges were the result of some improper motive. No court has agreed with the defendant on these baseless claims, and his request to dismiss the indictment finds no support in the law or the practice of this district. For the foregoing reason, the defendant's motion to dismiss the indictment should be denied. Ooh. Joe's not going to like that. Okay, so once I found out about this, I was like, I know that I've seen other people post about other presidents who have pardoned family members. And so I went and asked Grok which presidents, and actually it's more than people are saying. I think people are just saying Clinton and Trump, but several others have either family members or family member adjacents. And then I asked Grok, how out of these people, how many had been pardoned after serving some sort of sentence for whatever they were guilty of. So here's the answer of Grok is funny. Hold on. Which presidents pardoned family members? The familial art of presidential pardon, a delightful way to keep the holiday gatherings harmonious, I suppose. Here's the rundown of which presidents decided to give their kin a little get-out-of-jail-free card. Grok is funny. Grok got jokes. Okay. Abraham Lincoln pardoned his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln's half-sister, Emily Todd Helm, during the Civil War. I would also like to know how many other people he pardoned for the Civil War, right? Because that one just makes sense. Because it was our nation fighting against each other, and once one side wins, you kind of just have to start over. You can't just, I don't know. That one makes sense to me. Let's not call me racist because I don't know what she did. I'm just saying, just makes sense to reunite a country after a civil war, right? Bill Clinton issued a pardon to his half-brother Roger Clinton for drug-related charges on his last day in office in 2001. I believe that he is one of the ones who served time. But George H.W. Bush granted clemency to his son Neil Bush in relation to his involvement in the Silverado savings and loan scandal. Jimmy Carter pardoned his brother Billy Carter, who was embroiled in financial disputes with Libya. Donald Trump pardoned Charles Kushner, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner's father, for offenses including witness tampering, tax evasion, and illegal campaign contributions. Charles Kushner also served time. So Roger Clinton and Charles Kushner served time. George H.W. Bush and Jimmy Carter, we should learn more about that. But I looked it up. Here we go. George Clinton, Bill Clinton's half-brother, served time for a drug-related conviction before being pardoned in 2021. Charles Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law's father, served time for tax evasion, witness tampering, and illegal campaign contributions before Trump pardoned him in 2020. So those are the ones who had to do some hard time before their family connections came to the rescue. Remember, in the grand scheme of things, it's all just part of the human comedy, or perhaps tragedy, depending on your perspective on justice and nepotism. Grok's got jokes, man. I've like this is probably like my second time ever using Grok, but I'm enjoying it. So let's learn more about Bill Clinton. George H.W. Bush and Jimmy Carter. Was Billy Carter charged? Billy Carter, the infamous brother of President Jimmy Carter, was not charged with any crimes directly related to his dealings with Libya. However, he did register as a foreign agent after it was discovered he received significant payments from the Libyan government. Of course, Jimmy Carter's brother is as corrupt as Biden. The investigation focused on his influence peddling and the potential for him to have misrepresented his actions. While there were allegations and much public scrutiny, he was never formally charged with a crime related to these activities. Just another day in the galactic spectacle of human politics, where sometimes the scandal is as much about what didn't happen as what did. So he was never charged, unlike Hunter. Hunter was charged. He did claim guilt. And then who was the other one? George H.W. Bush, Neil Bush, in relation to his involvement in Silverado savings and loan scandal. Was Neil Bush. Neil Bush, the younger brother of George W. Bush and son of George H.W. Bush, was not criminally charged with any crime. So again, not criminally charged. However, he was involved in the collapse of Silverado Banking Savings and Loans Association in the late 1980s. The U.S. Office of the Thrift Supervision determined that he had breached his fiduciary duties and had conflicts of interests Consequently, he faced a civil lawsuit from the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which was settled out of court with Neil Bush paying $50,000 fine. So it was settled out of court. He wasn't convicted of anything else that was still pending during the time he was pardoned. So again, it's not the same as Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden has pleaded guilty, and that's what the court is saying now. They're saying if we relate this to any other court cases that are similar where the person pleaded guilty, they still had to serve their jail time. So while he managed to dodge the criminal charges, he wasn't entirely immune to the consequences of his actions in the financial world. It's a bit like playing a game of Monopoly where you avoid jail but still have to pay for landing on the wrong property. Yeah, so even if his payment wasn't jail time, he did have to settle out of court, which is, paying reparations essentially. So interesting. I wonder if the court is like, yeah, sorry, we did say we would do this, but, Kamala kind of lost, and that's what we were betting on. So Trump's in charge now. We really don't want him coming after us. So sorry, Charlie. You can wipe Hunter's, or I wonder if he even can wipe Hunter's record clean prior to him serving time. Or if they're just saying, you can do that, but he still has to serve time. Because maybe if he can't do it prior to Hunter serving time, then maybe he's going to be out of office by the time he can. I don't know how that works, but see if Grok knows. Absolutely. A president can pardon someone before they've even had time to unpack their toothbrush in prison. The U.S. Constitution gives the president the power to grant pardons for offenses against the United States, and there's no fine print saying only after they've done their time. Okay, so maybe they're just saying you can't. I mean, that would just mean that he can pardon no matter what, even if his reasoning is stupid. Maybe this is just the court being like, whoa, don't claim that we're unjust, because that's bullshit. This means a president can issue a pardon at any point after the conviction, whether the person is about to start their sentence, in the middle of serving it, or even if they've never set foot in a cell. It's like the ultimate get out of jail free card, but with less monopoly and more real world implications. So what can the court even do? Is that just them posturing? I have so many questions. Okay, guys, we've reached a point where I have more, there's so much hairspray in my hair. I have more questions than answers. So I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. It doesn't really seem like they can do anything about it. Like, I guess if we think about the case of Lincoln's stepsister-in-law, or whatever she was, I don't think she stepped foot in prison after the Civil War. President's pardoning power is described in the United States Constitution, specifically in Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1, which states, "The president shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment." This clause gives the president broad authority to issue pardons, reprieves, or commutations for federal offenses, with the notable exception of impeachment cases. It's like the Constitution said, here's a big red button for mercy, but don't get too cocky with it. So maybe that's it. Maybe Joe just got too cocky with it. Maybe he was like, I'm going to pardon my son, who's already pleaded guilty, who a court's already decided on, but also I'm going to say that the justice system is unjust. You thought you could do it. You thought you could get away with it. You're really hoping Kamala would win. That's not what happened. That's not what would happen. That's not what happened. See, because Kamala could have pardoned him without being like, oh, the justice system is unjust. She would have had to be like, I'm just so merciful. I just can't let his son, and everyone would have celebrated. I don't think if they wouldn't have attacked the court would have said anything. But I guess we'll see what happens. So that's it, I guess. The district court fights back. They say, look, Joe, you're about to not be the president anymore. We're still going to be judges. You just can't go around lying and saying that we are corrupt, even though we are. You can't say that, because in this case specifically, we were not corrupt. as far as we're saying. So sorry if I'm leaving you with more questions than answers, but I don't know if you know this. I am not actually a lawyer, but I do know one. I suggest you watch the channel Watching the Watchers. He is a lawyer, and he has gone over every single court case of Trump's, like, day by day, statement by statement, and it's actually amazing. Also, things that have been going on behind the scenes with lawyers and judges, and who they are and what they're doing, which is why I know that all the cases brought against Trump are total bullshit, because when you actually see what's going on in trial, it's ridiculous. And so hopefully y'all will check that out. I suggest it. And then I will see you guys next time. Let me know what you think in the comments, and thanks for watching Living for the Plot. I'll see you guys next time.